listening to the Shawn P. Greene Show.
Welcome to the Shawn P. Greene Show. What's up, everybody? ShawnPGreene.com. Here I am. It's the last day of March 2026. And, man, we got so much going on out in the world today. Man, what's going on? What's really going on, man? How you doing? How are you doing? I'm doing okay. I'm here in Buffalo, New York. This part of the country, and even to the north of us, of Canada, Southern Ontario, we have had the last 24 hours thunderstorms and some hail south of us, where I'm at, the city of Buffalo, New York. In the south towns, categories of the counties, they had some hail. So, a couple damaged windshield I saw. Some pictures. Crazy, man. Feel bad for y'all that got to go through that process. But I really feel bad for those people who don't have car insurance, or at least the ability to cover your windshield, because that's an issue. Some people don't have windshield as part of their insurance. Crazy. Let me just copy something I tweeted. I put down on my Facebook or my X account. It's Shawn P. Greene. Lots of material to discuss today. Podcast is Jaden Ivey, Iran, Israel, prosperity gospel, Passover. How about that? So there's a lot going on here, and we'll get into that in a little bit. I do want to wish you a happy end of March and beginning tomorrow. I think it starts late tonight. I'm not sure, but it's Passover Seder starts, I think, tomorrow, which is the 1st of April. 2026 cycle. And so Passover is a 7-day period, and it begins today, I believe. If I'm not mistaken, sundown was tonight is when it starts. If not, then it's tomorrow. I don't know. I'm always behind. But I do believe it was begins tonight. Anyways, a 7-day period, Passover. It's a celebration, for those that don't know, of the post. And I kind of talked about it last week, about the blood over the post of your door, of where your tent, where you lived back in Israel's days of the last days of the Egyptian captivity. The Passover angel. That was going to kill the firstborn of every household that did not have that blood on the doorpost. I'm not going to get into all that as much this time. I spoke about it last week, but this week I will get into more about the Good Friday part of it. And it's interesting because how many times do we have people saying, well, if it's 3 days and 3 nights in the tomb, how is he buried on Friday and rose on Sunday morning? I'm talking Friday afternoon. It's a good question. And I do have some answers for that. But I'm not going to try to get too deep into it, but I do want to bring that up because a lot of people will use that as a controversial you know, subject to refute the Bible. All right, let me just put my little notes in my podcast. Okay. Okay, my little podcast, my little program. Okay, I think I'm good. So, for those of you looking for the high quality production, that's not here right now. All right, so don't be mad. All right, so I just saved the information. Okay, let's just get out of here for a second. Want to get into the big deal that happened this week, and I think I can get to it quick with this here. Let's go on X for a second. Jaden Ivey. For those that do not know, Jaden Ivey, a basketball player, was released Monday by the Chicago Bulls because he would not honor the celebration of Pride Night for the Chicago Bulls. So here's a picture of him, Jaden Ivey. He was number 31. He was released. So now I'm sure they're going to dance around it saying that's not why, because if that is why, he's got a lawsuit, a viable lawsuit. Here's the video of what he spoke on. Let me see if I can bring that up here.
Right? That the world can proclaim LGBTQ. Right? They proclaim Pride Month and the NBA. They proclaim it. They show it to the world. They say, come join us for Pride Month, to celebrate unrighteousness. They proclaim it. They proclaim it on the billboards. They proclaim it in the streets. Unrighteousness. So how is it that one can't speak righteousness? How is it one that how are they to say that man, this man is crazy? I'm not the Jay I used to be, but the old Jay is dead. I'm alive in Christ. No matter what the basketball setting is, I'm born again, the Holy Spirit. I've been saved by Jesus Christ. No matter what, how many DMPs I don't get to play, or no matter how many points I score, those things are a temporary thing.
So, all right. To me, very valid points. Okay. All right. I'm going to look at this first of all from just an unbiased outsider looking in perspective. So if I'm just a human being, I'm an American human being. I have the right to remain silent. That's only if I'm detained. But I also have the right to freedom of speech. Okay? An organization, though, that pays you, if they have an agenda or they are 100% behind a certain ideology, and you cannot speak your mind, then that should be made clear when you are hired from that organization. Okay? I don't think that was made clear, that if he rejects the league's desire to celebrate Pride Month, that if he says something against it, then there's repercussions. Now, on the other side of it is, I don't know if there's proof that this is why they let him go. I don't know this player as a player. I don't follow basketball enough to know if this guy has stats, if he's has problems with his performance. I don't know. So I don't know if it was justified to let him go apart from this incident. I don't know. Okay, so that's the most unbiased way I can view this right now. With that said, we have a whole group of people, allegedly 3 million people in this country, who actually hate the current president. Some of them have obscenities on signs in various places. Some people do various plays in the street during demonstration, a sign of protest. And I do recall in the very beginning, people were demonstrating, assassinating the president. And one person in general, or in specifically, said they thought awfully hard about blowing up the White House, namely Madonna. All these people, they have organizations they represent in one way or another, whether it's a nonprofit or if it's a real company that, that's a regular business, or it's a record label or a promotion company if you're in entertainment, or if you have an agency. Everybody is represented by somebody in one way or another. You can be an employee for, Apple Computer, or you could be, janitor for a high school, a school board, whatever the case may be. Everybody has representation above them somehow, in one way or another. And yet you don't really hear about too many repercussions of people saying their minds, sometimes vulgar expressions, sometimes very hateful towards not just the current president, but anybody, even the previous president. It doesn't matter who you're chanting against. Somewhere somebody is watching you, and they see what you're doing, and they're going to take that and say, okay, well, you don't really share the views of this organization. And some people might get released because of it. So, anyways, I don't know the full story. It's a developing story as far as I'm concerned. But yeah, this was an incident that, okay, head coach, here's a statement right underneath this video we just played on X. John Root, I don't know who he is. He states that Chicago Bulls head coach Billy Donovan said Jaden Ivey didn't live up to the certain organizational standards. Was that because of his 3-point shots, his layups, the way he dressed? What was the standards he's discussing? Bulls team statement said Ivey's conduct was detrimental to the team. The Chicago Bulls have said plainly that they do not support Christians. Well, that's John Root stating that, but is that really the case? Is Billy Donovan against Christians? Is that the case? You know, if this is the case, if this is the truth, he's got a lawsuit. You know, there is a lawsuit, at least in my opinion. Janie says his wife has been ignoring his messages and his whole family betrayed him, calling him crazy. A lot of blowback for just standing up for what you actually believe in. You know, you have to have thick skin in this world because there are people that really just look for ways to kind of cut you down for what you believe because they feel strongly against what you think, whatever that case may be. Let's see what Jaden was saying for his ignoring the messages now. Let's see what it says.
Those who are around me, those are my family members betraying because of what I spoke. The truth. Saying that I'm losing my mind, saying that I'm crazy. These are my own family members. My blood. Man, he's psycho. He's this, he's that. Those are my own household. That's why my wife in here and she not even texting me.
Okay. Well, some people have convictions that are biblical, and some people will question, is the Bible actually a viable book for morality or to take a stance on a political topic? Well, you can't question people's spirituality unless you're a Christian. Seems like that's the case, especially it seems more and more in the West. You can question Christians. Why? Because Jesus says to love your enemies, pray for them that despitefully use you. We're the only denominational I wouldn't say denomination, but we're the only religious institution or religious ideology who everybody wants to kill. People hate. They just hate. I've noticed it. Now there's some banter amongst others in between each other, and they do have some hate amongst each other as well. But the commonality, it seems, that if you're a liberal leaning person, and I'm not saying everybody that has a liberal leaning thought processes, but those that do, for the most part, have a disdain for a biblical viewpoint, whether it's Old Testament or New Testament. More so in the New Testament that Christians adhere to, periodically reference Old Testament scriptures, but those that are opposed to Christians are very vocal, very opinionated, very hateful in their speech, and yet they call what a Christian would say, quoting the Bible, as being hate speech. And I think it's I can't remember what it was. I heard it recently that some people are just flat out saying the Bible is hate speech. And so they don't want to allow it to be read or reviewed or anything in certain platforms. Interesting. Here's another wasn't his official, looks like he was retweeted, but Jaden Ivey said was thrown off the Chicago Bulls today over his, so this is 23 hours ago, over his Christian views of the LGBTQ plus pride events. He's reacting live on IG right now and refusing to back down from his religious convictions. Okay, why not? Whatever conviction somebody has, they should be able to speak it. Whether it's left or right or center, people in this country have been given the right to speak how they feel and think. And social media opens that door as well. But there is blowback. There's a lot of people that disagree with him. And they don't just say, well, I respectfully disagree. They don't have that kind of attitude. They have a you whatever, cuss this, whatever. They want to cut him down in any possible way. He's reacting live on Instagram right now, refusing to back down from his religious convictions. NBA won't dare to do this to any other faith, which is true. Christians must stand with Jaden. So this is a statement made by Robbie Starbuck. I don't know who he is. I don't know why he's in my feed other than I just searched for Jaden. Jaden Ivey. Go to Jaden's IV. If you want to go, he's got 19,000 followers. I think just an hour ago he had 18. So, let's see what he's saying here.
They said my conduct is detrimental to the team, right? Why didn't they just say we don't agree with his stance on LGBTQ? Why didn't they say that? But how is it conduct detrimental to the team? What did I do to the team? What did I do to the players? I did nothing but practice with them, play with them, pass the ball to them, good teammate to them. Said good job, good shot. I said good job, good pass, way to play, bro. Right? I said these things to my teammates. Was never detrimental to them. So why is it that the NBA and the Chicago Bulls say that I'm detrimental to the team? How? Because I believe in the truth? Because I know Jesus is the way, the truth, and the life? How? How is my conduct detrimental to the team? Because of what I believe. Because of what the truth is.
And that's on his Instagram. Just reposted here on his pre-posted. I think it's Poison Ivy, if I'm not mistaken, is what his Instagram tag is. So whether you agree with it or not,
detrimental to the team.
It's an issue right now.
Why didn't they just say
it's a hot topic amongst many leagues, not just NBA, but now it's brought into the NBA more with this player. Another player backed his belief and supported his belief from the New England Patriots. And what's his name? I can't remember his name. Stevenson, maybe? I gotta look it up. But the head coach of the the New England Patriots, okay? Mike Vrabel, I think that's how you say it. He kind of stood a little bit behind his own player, I think. I watched a short clip of him doing something like that. To support his player also being vocal. But the organizations tend to favor a liberal conscience, not a conservative conscience. So anybody who's got a liberal perspective on everything, I'm sorry to say, you guys got a lot of hate. Now, there are some conservatives too. I'm not downplaying that either. There's a lot of hate groups within the conservative side of things, alt-right and all that stuff, that just as bad of a viewpoint about how they think about liberal thinking people. So, they're not out of the woods either. So, love your neighbor as yourself. Love your enemies. Pray for those that despitefully use you. That's a Christian concept. Not all Christians follow this, though, and a lot of Christians are still not fully reformed from their worldly thinking either. You got to remember, a lot of people that get born again or become saved or accept Christ as their Savior, before that, in the Christianese term, BC, before Christ, you got to remember, most of us people were liberal thinking, buck wild, angry at everybody, angry at ourselves, self punishing with drugs and alcohol and whatever else, or just self-gratifying with everything else that's pleasurable, and it's just about me and it's self-centeredness. We were thinking like that too, so it's not like we're not understanding. The problem is a lot of people who are liberal thinking and have never been in the conservative thinking brackets completely miss us as all, or dismiss us all as whack jobs. But that's how a lot of conservatives also think of liberal people, as whack jobs. I would say I was a whack job back in the day. Okay, my thinking was skewed based on selfish desires, just hate for no reason sometimes just hate because it's an easy target, because everybody else hates him or her or whatever. And even as you get born again and become a new creation, that doesn't go away automatically. It should. What happens is you have a spiritual rebirth and something changes on the inside of you, but the rest of you still has some refinement over time to be done. And that takes time. That's renewing your mind. That's why Paul was describing it, that you daily renew your mind, because every day you're still thinking the way you used to think, and you got to daily renew that mind. You got to receive the mercies of God every morning, because chances are the night before you've done something that's against God's law. Not everybody, but many people. And, it's a daily walk. Being a Christian doesn't necessarily mean you are automatically the standard. I think that's where some of us Christians, and I'm going to even say that about myself, some of us Christians, when we get saved or rededicate ourselves, we come under a conviction of the Holy Ghost, we realize, okay, this is against God's law, and it's now affecting me on the inside. I feel guilt. I feel shame. I feel like I am missing my relationship with my Father in heaven. Some of us get to that point and we respond by saying, okay, Father, I want to change and I want to return to your ways. And that's just like the beginning of that race. It doesn't mean you finished the race automatically. Okay? Unless you died on the spot, then you finished the race. But But your process of being sanctified, okay? This is the part where a lot of people who are not Christian do not understand. The process of being sanctified or becoming more and more separate from a worldly perspective. It doesn't mean you totally forget about your whole experience in a worldly sense. You still remember all of that, which is why when somebody challenges the way you think, and you sometimes you laugh. I laugh. Somebody challenges the way I think. I'm like, I thought exactly like you did. And I don't try to be condescending or try to act in a certain way where I feel like I'm better and I want that person to feel that same lowliness. No. We're all on the same level playing field here. We all have come short of the standard. We've all have fallen. We've all have sinned. Nobody's better than the other. Okay? We're all under refinement. Some have progressed a little in the natural sense, but we're not there yet. We have not arrived. The spirit has been renewed, but the body, the mind, our soul, our will, our emotions still has to get worked on. And that's really that's what the Holy Ghost is for. That's what being baptized in the Holy Ghost will help you get through that process sooner. And it will empower you to do the work that God initially created you to do. Whether you agree with that or not, I don't care. You know, I try to be empathetic, but there's times where people just are so mean that it gets to a point where I just don't care if you don't agree. You know, I understand you don't agree, but I don't care if you agree or disagree. I know what the Lord has shown me. And there's things I'm still learning. So as I grow in the Lord, I start learning new things too. The best thing to be is just to stay humble. It's hard to be that way after God brings you to another level of understanding. But God demands us to stay humble. He demands us to stay humble. Even in the midst of whether you're right or wrong, in a conversation, a debate, an argument. I think Jaden Ivey was humble in this situation. I don't think he was trying to be prideful. I just think he was trying to stick to his guns. And that's it. That's how I feel about that situation. I don't think he's trying to hurt nobody, but he didn't want anybody to impose their ideology and will on him, is all he's saying. Because of that, because he's younger too, I don't know how old he is. I'm assuming late 20s, maybe early 30s. But the fact that, you know, he's a younger person, people will discredit his thinking as if he's not mature. But in actuality, I can see and I perceive him to be spiritually more mature than most people his age. And that's why I think he's justified in what he did. So that's my opinion. It's my opinion. What are you going to say? What are you going to do to me? You're going to put me up against the fence? I don't think I'm that important. So, anyways, Jaden Ivey, that was a big situation this week. Rocks the sports world. You got the NFL, the NHL, NBA, Major League Baseball. I think we had a LA Dodgers was a couple years ago was a big situation where they had like trans or nuns or whatever, you know, gay pride nuns in the Dodger Stadium one time, and somebody rejected that. I think somewhere in Dallas, maybe one of the teams as well. I think, yeah, Texas Rangers. They rejected that kind of event in their house. some hockey teams, I think. I don't know all of them, but there's a lot of scrutiny for any, you got a lot of manly men, straight men. And I'm not talking about the Straits of Hormuz. Some of you know what I'm talking about. I'm talking about manly, masculine, straight, heterosexual males who are very machismo in their masculinity, are very uncomfortable with somebody imposing a homosexual evening or any kind of other, pride event. I've never heard of anybody having a pride heterosexual night anywhere. I never heard of that. I think maybe sometimes people might imply that, but I don't think I've ever heard it outright spoken like that. So, now, let's make it clear on my points of view now. That was just kind of like an overview of some things, but my point of view. I'm heterosexual. I do not hate people that do not align with my kind of sexuality or call themselves a different gender other than the two that I believe exist. Okay? I'm not hateful of anybody. I don't agree, but I don't hate. And a lot of people, because you disagree, automatically take that as a hate. And it's not hate. I don't hate nobody. Some people like the color blue. Some people like the color purple. I like blue over purple, but I don't hate purple. You know what I mean? It's just, to me, it's logic. It's more about logic. And me being in the creative arts for many years, I understand the creativity side of things. You can be whomever you want. You could imagine whatever you can imagine. You can do whatever you want to do. Be whoever you want to be. All that stuff. I'm down with that kind of creativity. But at the end of the day, there's also a level of science that I also agree with. Not all sciences I agree with either. And not every scientist or science teacher or person who proclaims what is science. I don't agree with everybody's theology. Even amongst Christians, we have disagreements on what is theology. What is a certain doctrine that's a must. It's disagreements. We can disagree. In America, if we can disagree. And I've been to countries, I've been in places where if you disagree in public, it could be a law that could be your death. Okay? So, we're in America. And people listening to me from other countries, sometimes they're on VPNs to be able to listen to something like this. They might also align with that thinking, but they can't be public with it. They can't tell other people how they feel and think about politics, about religion, about economics, about school, schooling, education. A lot of people can't say anything, especially if they have an oppressive government or a oppressive religious system that controls or manipulates that government. Just count your blessings in the USA. And we don't have to internalize everything, but we do not have to be hateful towards the other people's opinions. You know, I think that's a maturity issue. When people, especially grown people, when they get past a certain age and they start having hate as a means of controlling how they act, then that shows a level of maturity that still needs to be worked on. We've all been there, okay? I've had my share of, emotions of jealousy, emotions of hatred, a disregard for somebody's opinion. I've had those emotions to where I look at the person in an evil way now because they're not what I want them to be, or they're not doing what I want them to do. And, you're trying to impose your will on another person, but yet somebody tries to do that to you of the opposite, thought process. Then you take that as hate. To me, that's backwards. Okay, it's just maturity. It's all about maturity. And a lot of people are still not mature even into their 70s. You know what I mean? It starts early, and sometimes just a lack of discipline that was given to them early in life. But sometimes it was just rebellion, flat out rebellion, no matter how good of a discipline system that they had growing up. They're just flat out rebellious. Some people just stay that way and never grow up. So, enough of my ranting about all that. I spent all that time on that topic, but you get the idea, right? Everybody's got opinions, and the phrases. Everybody's got an opinion. Everybody's got noses. Opinions are like noses. Of course, other body parts some people use. I won't say it here. All right. What else was I going to talk about tonight? I'll keep it brief on the other topics. Iran and Israel and the USA. Might as well throw the USA in there. Iran is, it's got a lot going on. And I'm not going to say I agree with everything. I don't agree with everything Iran is doing. I don't agree with everything Israel is doing. I don't agree with everything the USA is doing. And I'm not going to get deep into which is which, what they're all doing. But the point is, we have conflicting systems between the three of us. And we are not able to get along, come to agreements in a civil way, because our ideologies are very much opposite. This is my point, even with the Jade and Ivy situation and other related issues. People are just angry with each other because it's really dominance. Who's going to dominate who? And it's been a way like that for history of America, the history of Iran, formerly known as Persia. Empires. They're all over the place. They're all over this historical context. We could go Sumerians. We can go to Babylonians. We can go to Akkadians. Go to the Egyptians, the Nubians, the Libyans, the Sudanese. We go to, the Indians, the Pakistanis, the Chinese, the Russians. We go to the Germans, the Irish, the British, the Italians. All these, Rome and Greece, and so on and so forth. We have all these empires in the past that just keeps on repeating itself over and over. America is kind of like the new kids on the block, but we're just an extension of the West Northern Europe, or most of Europe. Matter of fact, most of what's settled in the USA are mainly German descent. If you didn't know that, looking on your map, somebody's got maps all over the demographics of who settled in America. Up until like the 1980s from different countries, the majority of the Midwest and the middle part of the USA are German descent. And you got English, you got French, you got Spanish, some Irish, stuff like that. But the Germans are predominant. A lot of the Germans during World War I and II that were coming over here were changing their names, that were anglicized, so that they didn't draw a red flag. And I got a question: how does a Germanic people blend in to America, where most of the original descendants came from, like England, if you will, 13 colonies, or at least that part of the country, and they changed their names more anglicized because a lot of the original Brits were overtaken by the Anglos and the Saxons, which were Germanic peoples. That's why it was easier for them to blend in. They looked similar in DNA. How you like me now? So, don't say I didn't tell you something. That's a little nugget for you. What else? So Iran, do I feel sad for the innocents? Absolutely. For Iran, for Palestinians, for Israeli, for Americans, for Saudis, for anybody in any part of the world, of people that just trying to survive, that are innocently casualties of war or a terrorist attack. My heart goes out to that set of type of people. And for the people, that were part of a target, I don't work in intelligence, so I don't know details about all the targets. I know enough to know that, hey, if somebody posed a threat, then, in a sense of nations against nations, in a worldly sense, then, you're proactive. Kind of like what George W. Bush was trying to do, being proactive. I don't agree with all of that. Okay? Again, it goes against really the Christian principles of turn the other cheek, love your enemy, pray for your enemies. Okay? That's the concept of Christians. We know that there's evil people plotting against Christians. Nigeria is a big example right now. Their own people group, divided by religion. Radical Islam to the north. And I don't know, I wouldn't call them radical Christians, but they're more radical Christians than we are in the United States as far as their faith in Christ, are under attack. The Christians have been under attack by the radical Islamicists. They're pushing in from the Middle East. The ideology has been pressing in through northern Africa into the sub-Sahara. Nigeria is just the next succession in line to be overtaken. Just all over the place. The whole continent, northern part of the continent of Africa, has been radicalized by Islam. And anybody that's Christian is an infidel. Guess who else thinks we're infidels or heretics or whatever? Anybody that follows the Hebrew faith, particularly what people would call the Jewish faith. They don't agree with Jesus being the Messiah, so they have a disdain for Christians. Not everybody. Just saying. There are some radicals in every group. So Israel and Iran, that's the war between them. America has been dragged into this, okay? Donald Trump has fallen into Netanyahu's traps, my opinion, in the last 8-9 months. Yep. And so everybody that hated him before really hates him now, and I can see why, coming from a left-leaning perspective. Because he's not really, I don't know. He's got a divide, conquer, imperial perspective on what he's doing right now. I see that, and it's obvious that a lot of people foresaw that happening. So, it is what it is. What do we do? Just stop voting and just let a few peasants that are trying to vote for a president to deal with it and feel bad or good about what they did or didn't do? What do you do? Politics is a catch-22 no matter what you do. The Biden administration, we had a lot of problems, lots of issues, a lot of things we complained about as Americans. Now we have another president, the same kind of complaints. We had complaints during Obama's administration. We had complaints during George W.'s administration. We had complaints during President Bill Clinton. George Bush Sr. It just keeps going. Every president, there are groups of people that disagree with them wholeheartedly. I think the only exception of the landslide was President Reagan's second term, if I'm not mistaken, or was the first term, whichever one had the landslide. Carter didn't have a chance, and that was because the beginning of Iran, the new regime, the Islamic regime, they had hostages in Iran in 1979, and it was just perfect timing for the Gipper to be the man to ride his horse on the stage. So anyways, what else? What's another topic? Iran, Israel. Oh, I want to bring up this prosperity gospel thing. This was interesting. So, for those of you who do not know, for those that are paying attention to what's going on in Trump administration, Paula White, Kane, appointed Paula White as the lead of the White House Faith Office. Okay, she's not the topic of discussion right now in this category, but there's another guy that his name is Kenneth Copeland. So, okay, here's here's an interesting meme. It says extreme prosperity preachers, it lists a couple of them. And it says the Bible doesn't teach setting up a 501c3 or 501c business and preaching lawlessness. All right, so these are people that are like vehemently, if I can say it right, opposed to prosperity gospel. Okay, and flace teachers. You spelled it wrong. Whoever this guy is. Flace teachers. So you got all these people that have commentaries and interviews and all that stuff. But more recently, Kenneth Copeland was interviewed by a young man. I don't remember his name. but it was like a 2-hour interview, maybe more, because they cut it down. I could tell it was edited, about the prosperity gospel. Let me see if I can find this guy's interview. I'm pretty sure I can find it. It's under Facebook. I think it was under YouTube. I was watching the beginnings of it, but you can tell it was cut up. And okay, Bryce Crawford. Here you go. I'll just show you. Bryce Crawford's interview about a day ago.
She
And there he
didn't
is.
act like it didn't
Kenneth
happen.
Copeland.
Wow.
Walked up on the porch. I said, Gloria, will you marry me? Okay.
Bryce
And
Crawford
went inside and said,
podcast.
what have I done? I don't even know this guy.
So really the beginning was just his background, him growing up. And this was good because I don't think I've ever seen an interview of him growing up in the 80s, Christian television, which I was kind of not like tuned into it, but I've noticed, my parents would watch Christian programming. He was pretty much the head honcho of television at the time, teaching sermons, so on. I don't think I've ever seen an interview of him breaking down his kind of like his life. But this is Kenneth Copeland. For those that are not aware, obviously, if you're a fan of Bryce Crawford, you now know who this gentleman is. But he, I think it was 1972, he had his very first television broadcast. I think that was year of his show, his program on the Trinity Broadcasting Network, if I'm not mistaken. One of the Christian networks. First time he ever did it, and it was about faith, obviously. So, Kenneth Copeland been around for a long time and been very influential. Kind of took another preacher's message, Kenneth Hagin, and just blew up with it, and is pretty much the face of the prosperity gospel now. So Kenneth Copeland has, many planes and all kinds of different things that, been scrutinized over the years. And as far as I know, there was never any marital issues, with some other televangelists that were on, evangelizing the country, the world, whatever. So he was, I think he was also amongst those that were investigated a couple years back, about 10 years back. Some of his proteges would have been like Creflo Dollar, ironic name, and a couple other people. So anyways, many schools of thought when it comes to the prosperity gospel. And one of it is that, health and wealth is where you should be, and there should be no lack. And you can back all that up with Scripture. I believe that. Hyper prosperity gospel is where people are kind of drawing the line. I think that sometimes comes from people that are failures in ministry. Will try to point the finger and say, oh, so they don't feel so bad. They'll try to put somebody down who's very successful. Well, what about Mark Cuban, who owns the Dallas Mavericks? How many people are trying to put him down for owning the Mavericks? And having all this money and being on television and exploiting all these entrepreneurs on, Lion's Den or Shark Tank. I think Lion's Den is the Canadian version of Shark Tank. Why is Mark Cuban allowed to have a jet, multi-million-dollar house and all that stuff? So this is the argument. Why are many entertainers, sports people, ownership, entrepreneurs, Why are they allowed to have things, but a church person cannot be also an entrepreneur and be successful in it in a way that creates wealth? This is the argument. I personally don't think it's a bad thing to have wealth. I believe that the Bible allows for wealth. He teaches your hands to create wealth. So that's a biblical concept. I agree with that part. And I don't know his personal affairs. I don't know his tithing of record and giving and all that. Many people that follow him, have heard him giving to many entities, many charitable donations, many benevolent things. Wonderful. Okay, his wealth or poverty has not affected me personally in any possible way. I've never received a dime from him, and I've never given a dime to him. So, but it's not my business, the way I look at it. It's just because he's out there more, he's a bigger target. So, now you have a lot of other people that are similarly in that situation. Do I believe that, watching some clips of his, that maybe he's losing his marbles from time to time? Possibly. Could be attributed to being old age. Could be attributed to being, wow, the struggle is gone. But you know what? No matter how rich or poor you are, there's always something you got to deal with. God's never going to be done with you. He's got something else he got to work on you with. So chances are he's had to endure a lot of other things that's not related to finances. Okay? There's not a perfect scenario on this planet when it comes to being a Christian. So, anyways, that's my humble opinion. I don't hate the guy for being prosperous. I don't hate people for speaking health and wealth to people when it's better to be healthy, wealthy, and wise than it is to be sick, impoverished, and stupid. The actual opposite. So I think it's better to not be the latter three. So, but anyways, I don't agree with all his teachings either. Theology is a topic that many different theologians and Bible study teachers and people that interpret scriptures, people have different opinions about this topic. And to each his own. And I challenge debates amongst each other. I like listening to some of them. And I have no problem having debates myself. But I'm humble. I'll listen to people's perspective. If you bring something out that makes sense biblically, okay, I will take that perspective. But, exploiting everybody is, could be construed as a self-righteous, move. I know Mike Winger, who I love listening to, by the way, has had an agenda the last year and a half, it seems, to take down the bigwigs. But anyways, here's Bryce Crawford. If you don't know him, he's in his 20s, I think. Very influential. He's got 803 subscribers, so on YouTube. So he's got some influence. His interview with Kenneth Copeland is definitely, to me, worth bridging the gap in the with the different what's the word I'm looking for? Generations. It helps answer some questions because new young people coming up have no context of Kenneth Copeland, and Kenneth Copeland has no clue what people his age even think and feel. And he doesn't realize that there's information missing about his walk. Remember, 1970s, I think. I think he was born in 1936. So Kenneth Copeland has had a long life. 90 years old, coming up on. And Bryce is 20, so there's a big gap there. It's almost 70-year difference. So we can learn from each other's generations. And we should always be willing to be challenged, no matter where we are at. I wouldn't say challenged, because that's the wrong way, but at least questioned, so that, you know, the apologetics of it all is important in a Christian's walk. So, and again, Mike Winger's, you know, he's one of those faces. Sam Shamoon, he challenges everybody. He comes from a Catholic perspective, but he challenges Islam, Mormonism, even some Protestantism. So, Sam Shamoon, this is what he does. Let's see if I can find
Imagine being able to build an app with your...
I'm not trying to hear all these advertisements. I'll just give you a picture of him. I think Bryce Crawford interviewed Sam too. So that's cool. This is Sam Shamoon. It's also on Bryce Crawford's podcast. Matter of fact, I'm gonna save that to watch later. There you go. Episode 182. And that looks like it was 4 weeks ago. So Sam Shamoon, he's a Syrian. He reads Arabic. He's a Catholic. I think he was a Protestant at one point. So he comes from a lot of different perspectives. He likes to challenge Islam more than anything, though, at this point. So he's worth watching. And a couple other good people out there. So anyways, moving along. Let's go to the last little tidbit I had. I'm not going to slander people right now. I can't afford a $10 million lawsuit. Just giving you my opinion. Passover. So Passover, this is the season we're in. Passover comes from, matter of fact, I think we read it last week. We talked about it a little bit. It comes from various parts of the Bible. But ultimately, different denominations practice it differently. Different subcultures of Christianity. Some call it denominationalism. What else? It's really, to me, okay, this guy, I think this guy said something really weird. Anyways, you got a lot of different perspectives on what this is all about. Jonathan Cahn kind of bridges the gap with Messianic Jewish beliefs, Christianity, but also, Jewish backgrounds of the Messiah. And he's a Messianic Jewish Christian. So he's somebody to look at. But there's been a lot of conversions to Christianity in the Middle East. A lot of people are testifying to it. Yeah, and Iran and all that stuff. So Passover week, this Friday is Good Friday, celebrating the death of Christ and his burial. Saturday is supposed to be the Sabbath, and then Sunday is Resurrection Sunday. He comes out of the grave. So that's what this weekend is all about. And this is the celebration of Christ. It seems like it seems to be unfair to who a Christian would say the King of Kings and the Lord of Lords, that he only gets like 2 weeks in a year of celebrating. Christmas, well, actually, it's really just 2 nights. Christmas Eve, Christmas Day. Although we have 12 Days of Christmas is a song, and we have even Hanukkah, and we have a couple other Judeo-Christian holiday festivities, and Santa Claus and all that stuff. We get pictures taken at malls and all that. Jesus himself really doesn't get the whole year like he should. If he's the King of Kings and Lord of Lords, the whole year belongs to him. Our whole dedication should be to him. Okay, I'm not just talking to Christians, but anybody who ever is considering Christianity. It's a life, day to day, day in, day out dedication to Christ. It's not a half-hearted, experience. It really is meant for you to be completely all in with Jesus. It should not be half-heartedness. So 365, 366 on a leap year, every day should be about Christ and what we're supposed to do for him, serving him. When he proclaimed to Peter, after he asked Peter, who do you say I am? Who do people say I am? And he says, who do you say I am? Peter says, you're Jesus the Christ, the Son of the living God. That's who we should consider every single morning when we wake up. Even when I wake up in the mornings, first thing I say is Jesus. Now, 365 days, maybe I'll miss 20 days saying that. But for the most part, I wake up, first thing I say is Jesus, because it helps me establish my heart and my thinking and my pattern of life based on that. Is it always going to be staying that way throughout the day? Not all the time, but it should. But some days I fall short, and I got to repent. I got to ask for forgiveness. He's faithful to forgive. So, but I don't frustrate the grace. I don't try to take advantage of the mercy of God. Fall short sometimes, but I know I feel bad doing something against God's word, against God's, perfect will for my life that he's created. So Jesus should not be relegated to just Passover and Christmas. That's what I'm trying to say. He's got a lot more he did for, just 3 years walking on earth. He did a lot. And if we just did like a 3-year cycle study of everything he did for 3 years, we really would get the context of who Jesus really was. And then do all the studies too. I've been under the Protestant, or Reformed, as some might call it, part of Christianity my whole life. Somewhat, Dad, went to a Catholic church several times. I've done that. Lutheran church. I even went to a Greek Orthodox church. I've been to a lot of different types of Protestant churches, and I can't say I have loyalty to any of them particular school of thought, because I'm still seeking, and I'm not trying to let a system brainwash me to thinking a certain way. I want the Lord to show me in my heart, reveal it to me in the written word and by his Spirit, to reveal things to me. And he has. And I'm more at peace now than I've ever been in understanding of who the Father is, who the Son is, who the Spirit is, who I am, and who we should be. Our whole purpose is really to just be the supporting role for Jesus. That's the only way I can say it, express it. We're in the supporting role for Jesus. Jesus said to Peter, that nobody else revealed this to you, Peter, that I'm the Son of the living God, but the Father in heaven. And he says, upon this rock I will build my church. So Jesus was declaring he is the one building his church. It's his church, and he's building it. It's not our church. Like, we don't have the ownership of it. We are in his church, but we don't have the ownership of it. And he is building it. We're the supporting role for building his church, but he's building it, and he'll build it through us. So, understanding these things is so important. Just basic human knowledge to understand Christianity more. It's a lot less complicated than denominations have made it. Systems, step-by-step processes that weren't demanded of us in the first place. So, especially if you're not of Hebrew descent, you're not a child of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, or the tribe of Judah. You don't have a descendants from any of that. You are not under the Mosaic law. That's a fact. And Paul was making sure he told his Jewish counterparts to not demand the Gentiles, or the Greeks as some call it, or the Goyim, to insist that they follow the law of Moses to a T. There's only 4 rules, and we can get into that another time, but really there's only 4 things that they have to do. That's no compromise between Jews and Gentiles. Everything else is just formalities, and it's not. No man comes to the Father but by me. Just Jesus. No man comes to the Father but by me. That's what Jesus declares. That's how I believe it. And that's how I administer my life. Through what Jesus says. That's it. And Paul makes a lot of good points and suggestions and rules that to clarify some things. I tend to believe that was passed on from Christ. You got to remember, to me, the link wasn't just the apostles that Jesus left earth to take the church, or the group of people that are followers of him, but also who, the physician, Luke, was kind of like the bridge between the Old Testament or the New Testament, the Old Testament plus the written books of Matthew, Mark. Okay, Luke bridged that information with the times of Paul. He was following Paul throughout that whole journey. He was a part of being a scribe, basically, throughout Paul's journey. So he bridged the information gap between, Jesus' time and those that wrote about him and Paul's time. So he's the key element to succession of information. Paul just took probably what Luke was sharing with him, what he found that Jesus said or wrote, or not. He didn't write, but he said and did through other apostles as well. And Paul took all that information and he shared it with other, synagogues around the known world at that time. So that's all I got to say. It's Passover. The death, the burial, the resurrection of Christ. That's what this whole weekend's all about. To me, it's an important thing to know. If you ever are curious, if you ever want to know more about Jesus, about the things of Jesus. Oh, do I got one of them with me? I had them too. Where I put them. Anyways, I don't have them. You know those little Jesus things that they put out everywhere, you know. Did you find Jesus? You know, these kinds of things. It's a little image of the earthly Jesus, you know, or a likeness of the earthly Jesus. It's not the Jesus that has been resurrected, I don't believe. I believe it's a very different look, because many of them didn't even recognize him when he was resurrected. So the point is that you got to keep seeking the truth. You know, even if you are at a place where you hate your opposition, continue to seek the truth. And I know some people think they're finding the truth. And I challenge those people that say that they found the truth and it's not Jesus. I'll challenge those people. You know, not in the sense where I will hate you because you don't agree with me or you don't believe what I believe. You know, I'm not going to disassociate myself with people based on just a belief. A practice is different, but a belief, you know, there's always an opportunity to change how you believe. So do research, study, and, you know, you gotta really grow this part of you, the spirit man. You know, this is the real part of you that you gotta allow it to grow. And then the rest of this, body, mind, soul, everything else part of you, you know, you start maturing and you start growing. And I'm still immature, okay? I'm not going to claim that I'm super mature now, because I'm not. So it takes time. It takes a lot of time to mature. Be patient with yourself. Don't rush into maturing, but be fervent, be a little zealous. Try your best to do your best. And just grow. You know what I mean? So let's see if any okay. Okay. So anyways, I just want to thank you guys for tuning in. I think I could have had this on Twitch too, and I forgot to put it up there. Yep. Oh, wasn't connected to Twitch today. That's all right. You got me on YouTube and Rumble right now, and that's good enough for me. I just want to thank you guys for tuning in. It's been a fun day for me, you know, just relaxing, enjoying some R&R. It's been very stressful in a lot of ways, a lot of things we had to do, a lot of things that I could, a lot of things I can improve on, but a lot of things I have to deal with my daughter. To me, that's kind of like priority 2. Christ is 1, but priority 2 would be my daughter. Everything that she needs in life, stuff that's real important. So I try to focus on that. Try to make sure that she's taken care of. Guardianship is important. You know, the heritage, whatever you got to pass down. So, anyways, let's go Sabres. Let me just see where we're at. Oh, by the way, the Final Four, women's, they're all number ones. I think that's the first time it's ever happened. But it's a repeat of last year. So UConn women, I don't know if they won last year. I forgot. I think Arizona, Michigan, if I'm not mistaken, Illinois, and UConn. So it might be UConn again. Let's just I'm going to go to the Buffalo Sabres, see the schedule. This is for my own benefit, of course. But I got to go see a basketball game there a couple weeks ago. So, okay, they beat the Islanders tonight, 4-3. Look at that. All right, let's go Sabres. So I have to review that, and let's see if I can look at this schedule. The standings: Sabres they're Carolina too. So we're the first two teams that got to 100 points. So how about that? We're one more game than Tampa Bay Lightning. So in the East, the West, Colorado, I think already did that. They're 108. Dallas is 100. So look at that. Buffalo Sabres are in the top 4 of the NHL in points. Wow. How you like me now? And let me see if I can find the schedule here. That's not right, is it? Okay. Buffalo Sabres. I don't think that's the right website. I don't think so. Please stand by. Buffalo Sabres. Schedule. Again, I don't know why I still have Yahoo as a search engine. Pretty sure that I I had Google as a default. Okay, let's just go to the schedule real quick. Look at it. All right, Dallas Stars. That's a big one. We're tied right now, but they're in the West, so it's not a big deal. Blackhawks coming up. Let's see. We're talking about April 1st, though. Let's go back a little bit. Oh, yeah, we beat the Kraken. That was a big one. Okay. The Kraken was a shootout. And it was actually a big fight, too. All right. So tonight's game, another win. So we got the Senators, Capitals. Okay, April 6th, 10 p.m. versus the Lightning. Wow. We have a 10 p.m. game? You kidding me? I can't believe that. That's got to be wrong. 11:30 p.m. for Chicago. So April 15th is the last season-ending game. And we're going to be playing the Senators, Capitals, Lightning, Rangers, Blue Jackets, Blackhawks, and the Stars. Getting close, man. Getting close. We might be in the top standings. We don't know. Let's see what the Lightning got. Go to Lightning schedule. All right, so they played anybody tonight? Ooh, Canadiens beat them today. 4-1. All right, Canadiens, I'm not really a fan of yours, but grateful that you beat Tampa Bay Lightning for the sake of the Sabres only. Had the Sabres not had this kind of run, I would be in favor of the Lightning. They won it a couple years in the last 5 or 6 years, it's been a Florida team. All right, so the last game before that, Predators. So they got the Penguins, the Bruins. They come here to play the Sabres. Senators, Canadiens, Bruins again, Red Wings, and Rangers. So they got to finish it off with the East. That's going to be an interesting finale for the Tampa Bay Lightning. I think they have a good chance of beating all of them. But with the way the Canadiens played today, who knows what's going to happen. So, all right. Well, anyways, that's enough yapping. We had a good time talking with you about nothing. kind of like a Seinfeld episode. Close all this out. So, thanks for listening and watching. It's your boy, Shawn Patrick Greene. ShawnPGreene.com. I will show you. This is the page. And you just go to ShawnPGreene.com. ShawnPGreene.com. Got all my stuff on there. You can watch, listen, help me support my missions overseas. I got a mission in Pakistan, a mission in Bangladesh, a mission in India, and we have a lot of other people we could support. We just need your help. So feel free to be a part of that plan. And we do have options for receiving funds. And right here. So all my links for the money. All right. I'm not Kenneth Copeland. I don't have a jet. I don't fly all over the world. But I do have people I support outside of myself to help out. And I do have a few people that help me help them. And I want to help more. But, hasn't been as successful as I thought. But next time, when you think about it, you're looking for somebody to help. Help me help them. It's very difficult to be in their countries. They get persecuted for even suggesting Christ. And even me being a friend of theirs on the social media is a sketchy thing, because anybody from their areas that are looking for quote-unquote traitors, they try to look through not just me, but other people. They look through my information to find who are my friends from their countries. And through that, they try to look people up. So, it's a very dangerous situation. Not only Nigeria, but China, India, you name it. Persecution of Christianity is everywhere. And we do want to support those that are spreading the gospel, teaching the word of God, teaching principles of Christ. And it's not like a crusader to conquer a world and be emperors and to dominate a culture. That's not what Christianity is. It's a spiritual thing. It's a abundant life within, and it can be a manifested external thing, but it's not exclusive to the external. It's meant for blessing others, not to just be a hoarder of blessing. All right. Shawn P. Greene, I'm done. I'm out. It's been fun. I've had a good time chatting. I got off my chest kind of the thoughts I had for this weekend and then some. And please feel free to subscribe to this channel wherever you're watching it, wherever the link is that you're watching this from. Subscribe to the YouTube channel. Subscribe to the Rumble. Subscribe to my X. ShawnPGreene.com for all the links. And I look forward to talking with you again next week. Peace out, y'all.
You're listening to the Shawn P. Greene Show.